Wait, that's Harris's ex-wife. The barren one? Then whose kids are those? The music died before the musicians ever stopped playing. All it took was one woman stepping through the double doors. Loretta May didn't need an announcement. Her entrance wrote itself across every face in the room. Gold hoops flickered under the chandeliers, her midnight dress flowed with quiet defiance, and in each hand she carried more than children. She carried revelation, Lily on the left, James on the right. Glasses froze mid-air. Beulah, draped in lavender and pearls, clutched her chest like she was warding off spirits. And Harris? The smirk he'd polished all night cracked, sliding clean off his face until nothing remained but naked shock. Loretta's smile wasn't wide, wasn't boastful. It was sharper than both, quiet, knowing. The kind of smile a woman wears when she's done bleeding and started blooming. He thought I came here to be paraded as his failure, she thought, steady as steel. But Harris didn't bury me. He planted me. And this, she looked down at Lily and James, this is my harvest. If you believe no woman should ever be mocked the way Harris mocked Loretta May, hit subscribe right now. Harris and men like him will scroll past, but real ones won't. Smash. Like if you believe women like Loretta deserve respect. I like finding out where you, my lovely family members, watch my stories, so tell me in the comments. Where are you watching this from? Now let's get back into it. The chandeliers blazed above like crowns, but the spotlight had shifted. Tonight wasn't about Beulah's birthday or Harris's pride. It was about the woman no one expected to rise, walking into a room full of doubters with the fortune, the grace, and the children they swore she'd never have. The room didn't yet know it, but this was no humiliation. This was my homecoming. But to understand this moment, you must know the road that led me here. When I married Harris, I believed in fairy tales. I was young, with dreams of building a family, of filling a house with laughter and Sunday dinners. Harris had ambition. He talked about his plans to start a business, to buy us a home big enough for 3 children and a dog. He said all the right words, painted pictures of a future I wanted to step into, and I followed him with my whole heart. I gave up my job at the bank so he could chase his ventures. Just for a little while, Loretta, he promised. When I've made it, you won't have to lift a finger. We'll have everything we want. So I cooked, I cleaned, I stretched every dollar we had. I believed I was sowing into our future. At first, there were good days. He'd come home with cheap flowers, hold me close while we danced in the living room. Talk about baby names like we were already expecting. I remember lying on his chest one night while the radio hummed in the background, thinking, this is it. This is love. But love turned sour. Harris grew restless. Business meetings stretched into late nights. His words grew sharper, his laughter colder. He stopped looking at me like his partner and started treating me like his burden. You can't even give me children, he spat one night after too many drinks. What good is a wife who can't give her husband an heir? I cried into my pillow that night, believing his words, wearing his cruelty like a cloak of shame. And Beulah, God bless her, she never let me forget it either. At family dinners, she'd look at me across the table, her eyes narrowing. A real woman builds a legacy, Loretta May. My son deserves children. Each word cut me deeper, and Harris never defended me. He sat there, basking in her approval, while I shrank smaller and smaller inside myself. But I stayed, because sometimes hope is more dangerous than despair. Hope makes you believe he'll change, that tomorrow will be better, that the man you fell in love with will come back. There were days when he was soft again. He'd stroke my hair, whisper that I was his everything, even dream with me about our future children. And those days were enough to keep me tethered. But for every good day, there was a bad one waiting. Late nights turned into lipstick stains, smiles turned into insults. His hand that once held mine started to push me aside. And then, one evening, he simply stopped coming home. The divorce papers came quietly, slid across the table like a final insult. He didn't even fight, didn't even pretend to care. You'll be fine, he said casually, as if tossing me away was nothing. You were always better at surviving than at loving anyway. Beulah stood by his side, Her lips tight, her eyes satisfied. "It's best for everyone," she said. Everyone but me. I walked away with nothing but my name. Those first months alone were the hardest of my life. I worked odd jobs, scrubbing floors, sewing dresses, babysitting for neighbors. I saved pennies in jars. I cried myself to sleep in a one-room apartment that smelled of damp walls and loneliness. But pain can plant seeds, and mine did. I started baking bread to sell at the market, then meals, then packaged goods. People came back, then they brought others. My small kitchen became a shop. My shop became a company. Piece by piece, dollar by dollar, I built something Harris never thought I could. Independence. And then, in the quiet of my rebuilt life, something I had long thought impossible happened. I became a mother. Lily and James came into my world like twin flames, lighting every shadow I carried. The doctors called them miracles. I called them answered prayers. I raised them alone, pouring into them every ounce of love I once wasted on Harris. When I watched them laugh, when I heard them call me Mama, I knew I hadn't been broken. I had been remade. They grew strong, bright, full of life, and I kept them close, never letting Harris or Beulah know of their existence. To the world that had cast me aside, I was gone. But tonight, I returned. The room stared as Beulah clutched her pearls, whispering, "My God, are those—" I smiled, calm and steady. "These are Lily and James, your grandchildren." Gasps filled the hall. Harris's glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the floor. And just like that, the stage he had set to shame me began to crumble beneath his feet. The silence in the dining hall stretched so thick you could cut it with the same silver knives lying untouched on the tables. Lily clung tighter to my hand, her small palm warm and trusting, while James leaned into my shoulder, blinking at the sea of unfamiliar faces. "My grandchildren?" Beulah's voice broke on the word, as though her throat struggled to form it. Her hands trembled, and for a moment, the proud, commanding matriarch looked like a woman who had seen a ghost. The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers rolled across the room, weaving in and out of the jazz music like smoke seeping into the air. "She said grandchildren." I thought Harris's wife couldn't have kids. Then whose are they? Harris's face hardened, rage climbing his neck in hot red patches. He shoved his chair back so violently it screeched against the polished floor. "Don't listen to her, Mama," he barked, his voice rising louder than the music. "This is a stunt. She came here to ruin your birthday, to embarrass me. Those kids ain't mine." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Some gasped. Others leaned forward, hungry for the scandal. Melissa, standing just behind him like a shadow, smirked. Her eyes, sharp as broken glass, flicked over me with pure satisfaction. She wanted me to falter, to crumble under the weight of their disbelief, but I had not survived fire just to burn again. I straightened my back, shifted James on my hip, and looked Harris dead in the eye. "They are yours," I said evenly, each word sharp enough to slice through the lies he had built. "Lily and James are your children." The hall erupted. Some cried out, others laughed nervously, as though this were entertainment staged for their amusement. I could see it in their faces. Shock, disbelief, curiosity, pity, and something else. Awe. Because even standing in the lion's den, I did not bow. Beulah staggered to her feet, her pearls swaying against her chest. She moved closer, her steps unsteady, but driven by something primal. Her eyes darted between the children and me, searching for truth in the curve of their cheeks, the depth of their eyes. They do look like—" She choked back her words, then turned on Harris, her voice cracking with fury. "You never told me. You said she couldn't—" "She can't," Harris snapped, his words clipped, desperate. He jabbed a finger at me. "She's lying. She always wanted to trap me, to ruin me, and now she shows up with kids hoping I'll just claim them?" His words hung heavy, dripping with venom. Melissa placed a hand on his arm, her lips curling. "She's desperate, Harris," she cooed loudly enough for others to hear. "Pathetic. She couldn't keep you, so now she's clinging to these children to get attention." The guests whispered louder, their voices a rising tide of doubt and intrigue. I felt my stomach knot, but I refused to show it. I had lived through worse than whispers. "Attention?" I said softly, letting the word linger in the air. "Melissa, you mistake me for yourself. I didn't come here for your approval or for Harris's. I came because truth deserves a voice, and these children deserve to be known." Melissa's smirk faltered for the first time. Beulah's eyes brimmed with tears, her hand reaching as if to touch Lily's hair. But Harris stepped in front of her, blocking her view, his body stiff with rage. "No, no, Mama, don't let her fool you. She's always been manipulative, always. She's lying to make me look bad." The way he said it, his desperation, his trembling fists, betrayed the truth even before I spoke again. "Do you really want to go down this road, Harris?" My voice was calm, steady, but it carried the weight of years. "Do you want me to tell them how you left me with nothing? How you called me barren while you laid in another woman's bed? Do you want me to tell them how I clawed my way back from the ashes you set me on fire with?" The room grew still. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some refusing to meet Harris's eyes. Others watched me as if hearing my voice for the first time. I tilted my chin higher. "You thought tonight would be my shame, but Harris, it is yours." A sharp silence fell. And then, slowly, Beulah sat down again, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes darting between her son and me. She wasn't ready to accept it. Not yet. She had built Harris up in her mind as her golden child, her pride. But a crack had formed in the foundation, and no amount of denial could repair it. The musicians' fingers faltered on their instruments, the melody stumbling before picking up again in an awkward shuffle. Plates of roasted chicken grew cold, untouched. And still, I stood. It would have been enough to stop there. But I didn't come only to reveal the children. I came to show the woman I had become. So I let them all see the quiet power in the way I carried myself. My dress, a shade of emerald that shimmered with each movement, was not rented or borrowed. My jewelry wasn't cheap imitation. My presence wasn't the shadow of a woman Harris discarded. I was no longer the wife who had begged him to love her, no longer the outsider Beulah had sneered at. I was the woman who had risen from nothing into something Harris could never control. The whispers turned again, this time in my direction. "Where did she get that dress? She looks like she stepped out of a magazine. I heard she owns a company now. Is that true?" I smiled faintly, keeping my silence. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. The truth would unfold little by little, just as I had planned. Melissa's voice cut through the air again, sharp and shrill. "Oh, so you got yourself a nice dress and a couple kids, and now you think you're somebody? Harris doesn't want you anymore, Loretta May. He never did." Her laugh was brittle, forced, almost manic. But beneath it, I saw fear. Because she knew, everybody knew, that Harris's carefully constructed image was cracking, and once the truth spilled out, she would fall with him. I leaned forward slightly, my words directed at her, but loud enough for the hall to hear. "Melissa, I don't need Harris to want me. I don't need his love, his approval, or his name. I am not here for him. I am here for them." I squeezed Lily's hand gently, brushed my thumb over James's curls. My children, his children. "Proof that the woman you tried to break rose stronger than both of you put together." The room trembled with murmurs again, louder now, almost a chorus, and for the first time that evening, I saw doubt flicker in Beulah's eyes, not toward me, but toward her son. Harris tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He reached for his glass, his hands trembling. "Mama, don't believe this," he stammered. But the damage had already begun. As I looked across the room, at the faces wide with shock, at the man I had once loved trembling under the weight of his own lies, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not because the fight was over, it had only just begun, but because I knew, deep in my bones, that I no longer carried the shame they had heaped on me. It belonged to them now. The hall felt like it was holding its breath. Every eye darted between Harris, Beulah, Melissa, and me, like a theater audience waiting for the curtain to rise on the final act. Only, this wasn't scripted. This was raw, ugly truth clawing its way into the open. Harris's jaw clenched so tight a vein bulged along his temple. His voice, when it came, was rough, jagged. "She's lying. Those ain't mine." But his words didn't carry conviction. They carried desperation. Beulah's hand trembled against her pearls, her gaze flicking from Lily to James to me. For all her years of ice-cold judgment, she suddenly looked fragile, like a woman standing at the edge of something too big to process. They look like," she whispered, but couldn't finish. Melissa's laugh split the silence, sharp and cruel. "Oh, this is rich. Loretta May, you've lost your mind. You really think anyone's buying this fairy tale? Harris divorced you for a reason. You were worthless to him then, and you're worthless now." Gasps rippled. A few guests shifted in their chairs, embarrassed for her, but Melissa basked in the drama, feeding on it. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Instead, I adjusted James on my hip, his little hand curling into my necklace, and spoke with the steadiness of someone who had already walked through fire. "Melissa," I said softly, "do you ever get tired? Tired of clawing for scraps of a man who will never truly choose you?" The smirk froze on her lips. A murmur of amusement rippled across the room. Harris slammed his palm on the table, the glasses rattling. "Shut up!" he barked, his face a storm. "This is my mother's birthday, and you're turning it into a circus." I tilted my head, meeting his rage with calm. "No, Harris, you turned it into a circus the moment you invited me here, hoping to shame me. I just decided to step into the ring and remind you, I don't play the fool anymore." The guests hushed, hanging on the words like a sermon. Beulah's voice, fragile but cutting, rose again. "Harris, you swore she couldn't have children. You told me—" "I told you the truth," he snapped. "Mama, I told you she was barren. That's why I left. That's why I had to move on." Melissa's hand slid up his arm, staking her claim. "That's right. He moved on to a real woman, one who can give him everything Loretta couldn't." The arrogance in her tone made bile rise in my throat, but I smiled faintly. "Everything?" I asked. "Tell me, Melissa, what exactly have you given him? A warm bed? A proud arm to cling to? A mirror to admire himself in? Because from where I stand, Harris hasn't grown. He's shrunk. He left me thinking I'd crumble, but here I am, whole, strong, standing, while he hides behind you like a child." The murmur of the crowd grew louder, some even nodding. Melissa's face darkened, and Harris looked like a man drowning in his own lies. I shifted Lily's hand in mine, her small fingers grounding me. "You see," I continued, my voice stronger now, "when Harris left me, I had nothing. Not a dollar, not a home, not a friend in this family. But what he didn't know was that nothing can be the best place to start. From nothing, I built everything." A hush swept over the room. While he mocked me, I worked. While he was out drinking and cheating, I was learning, saving, building. And now, I let my eyes sweep over the crowd. Let the pause stretch. Now I stand before you with more than he could ever dream of, a fortune he couldn't even imagine, and children who carry the legacy he tried to erase. Gasps, whispers. Beulah's mouth opened, then closed, her pride battling with the cracks spreading through her armor. Melissa's laugh came again, but it was shrill this time, forced. "Fortune? Please? What are you now, Loretta? Some little businesswoman? Selling pies on the street? Don't embarrass yourself." But her eyes flickered. Fear. She had heard rumors. They all had. I smiled at her the way a lioness smiles at prey. "You'll find out soon enough." The room swayed between sides, some glancing at Harris with pity, others staring at me with awe. Harris's face was wet with sweat now, his fists clenching, unclenching. He looked like a man trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. You're making this up," he stammered. Enough!" Beulah's voice cracked like a whip. Every head turned to her. She rose slowly, her hands gripping the tablecloth for balance. Her eyes, once so cold to me, now glistened with unshed tears. "I want the truth," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Harris, if these children are yours, if she is telling the truth, then you've lied to me all these years." "Mama!" Her hand shot up. "Don't you mama me! You stood in my house year after year telling me Loretta May was a failure, that she couldn't give you children, that she was broken. And I believed you. I mocked her. I shunned her. Because I believed you." Her voice broke. "And now she stands here with 2 children who look like they belong to this family." Her words were a dagger, not just to Harris, but to Melissa, who suddenly looked pale, her claws slipping. I stayed silent, letting Beulah's words echo. For the first time, Harris's face twisted, not in anger, but in something closer to panic. He looked from me, to Lily, to James, to his mother's tears. His mouth opened, then closed, his words lost. Melissa leaned into him, hissing under her breath, "Say something. Deny it. Don't just stand there." But Harris couldn't speak, because deep down, he knew. I took a breath and stepped forward, my heels clicking softly against the floor. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Beulah," I said gently. "I came because my children deserve to be known. They deserve to be seen, not erased. Harris wanted me here as a joke, but there's no joke in truth. These are your grandchildren. Whether you embrace them or not is your choice, but you cannot deny them." Beulah's lips trembled. She reached a hand toward Lily, who shrank shyly behind my skirt. Tears slid down the older woman's cheeks, the first crack in the fortress she had always worn around me. Harris's face crumpled, his rage boiling into humiliation. This is ridiculous," he shouted. "She's trying to make me look weak." Melissa sneered, though her voice wavered. "Don't let her trick you, Harris. She's just bitter. You don't owe her anything. Not you, not your mama, not anyone." But the tide had shifted. The room could feel it. For years, they had watched Harris strut and boast, watched Melissa claw her way onto his arm. And now they saw the truth. The woman they had mocked stood taller than them all. And I knew at that moment I had only just begun. The tension in the hall was thick enough to choke on. The guests no longer whispered discreetly. They spoke openly, their voices tumbling over each other like waves crashing on a shore. "She says they're his children, but he swore she was barren. Look at them, the boy's nose, the girl's chin. They do look familiar." The music had stopped completely. Even the waiters, frozen mid-step with trays of champagne, leaned closer to catch every word. Harris's chest heaved, as if the very air betrayed him. His voice exploded across the room, sharp and panicked. "You're liars, all of you! These kids ain't mine!" He jabbed a trembling finger toward Lily and James. "They're not mine, you hear me? Loretta May's playing a sick game." Lily flinched, pressing herself against my leg. James buried his face into my shoulder, his little arms gripping my neck. My heart squeezed, but I held steady. I stroked James's back, my eyes never leaving Harris. "Look at yourself. You're shouting like a madman, scaring your own children. That's not denial, Harris. That's fear. Fear that the truth has finally caught you." A wave of murmurs rippled. Some nodded. Others frowned at Harris's spectacle. Beulah's lips pressed into a thin line, her body trembling in her seat. She stared at Harris as though seeing her son for the first time, seeing the cracks in the golden boy she had worshipped. Melissa leapt into the silence, her voice shrill. "Oh, don't fall for her tricks," she snapped, her hand clutching Harris's arm like claws. "This woman's nothing but a parasite. She couldn't satisfy her husband, couldn't keep a home, and now she wants to drag him down because she's bitter. Don't you see? She's jealous because Harris upgraded." The venom in her words sliced through the hall. A few guests gasped, others whispered uncomfortably, but I only tilted my head, smiling faintly. "Melissa, If Harris was such an upgrade, why do you look so afraid?" Her smirk faltered. "You call me bitter, but look at you, grasping at his arm like if you let go, you'll disappear. You spent years clinging to what I let go of. Tell me, who's the parasite here?" The crowd hummed, a low wave of disapproval directed at her now. Melissa's cheeks flushed, and she hissed under her breath, though the mic of gossip carried her words loud enough. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said simply. "I know I am." Harris's voice cracked as he tried to claw back control. You think you can just waltz in here after years and claim my name, my family, my children?" His fists trembled at his sides. "You're nothing without me, Loretta May. Nothing." I let the silence stretch before answering, steady and sharp. "Nothing? Harris, without you, I found everything. I built a business, a home, a life you could never give me, and I raised 2 children you swore I would never have. Tell me again, who's nothing?" The air thickened with gasps. Some guests nodded, their eyes wide with awe. Others whispered furiously, debating the truth. But the tide was turning. Beulah stood suddenly, her cane striking the floor. "Enough!" Her voice quivered but carried command. "I want to know the truth." Her eyes burned into Harris. "You told me she was barren. You told me she couldn't give you children. You let me shame her, mock her, cast her aside. If she's lying, then prove it. Prove it, Harris." He opened his mouth, but no words came. His lips trembled. His face was drained of color. Melissa's nails dug into his sleeve. "Say something," she hissed. "Don't just stand there." But he couldn't. He looked like a boy caught in a lie too big to maintain, and the silence was louder than any denial. I stepped forward, my children close beside me, and let my voice cut clean through the room. "He can't prove it, Beulah, because it was never me. It was him all along. Harris wasn't man enough to face his own weakness, so he laid it on my shoulders. He called me barren, when the truth was, he was the one who could never give you grandchildren." Gasps cracked the air like thunder. A glass slipped from someone's hand, shattering against the floor. Beulah swayed, clutching the table for balance. Her eyes filled with tears, not of rage at me, but of devastation toward her son. "Harris," her voice broke. "Is it true?" He stammered, sweat pouring down his temple. "Mama, I didn't mean—" But it was too late. The truth was already out, bare and ugly. Melissa turned on him like a viper. "You lied to me?" Her voice shrieked through the hall. "You told me she was the problem. You told me you left her because she couldn't give you children." "Shut up!" he barked, but his voice cracked, and everyone heard the guilt beneath it. Melissa shoved him hard, her eyes blazing. "All these years I stood by you, I fought for you, I defended you, and you let me believe she was broken? When was it you?" The hall buzzed like a hive in chaos. Guests shook their heads, whispering furiously, some openly glaring at Harris. Beulah's sob broke the noise. "All these years," she whispered, "all these years I hated her, and it was you." Her tears streamed, raw and unstoppable. She looked at me then, her face crumpled in something I never thought I'd see. Regret. I softened, just slightly. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Beulah," I said gently. "I came to show you what you've missed. Lily and James deserve to know where they come from, not to be erased, not to be lied about, to be known." Beulah's hand reached for Lily, who stepped forward timidly. The old woman's fingers stroked her granddaughter's curls, trembling as if afraid she might vanish. "My babies," she whispered, her tears dripping onto Lily's hair. "My grandbabies." The hall fell quiet, moved by the sight. Melissa's voice broke the moment, shrill and furious. "Don't fall for this act, Beulah. She's manipulating you, making you soft. Look at her. She's flaunting herself, parading these kids around like trophies. She doesn't want reconciliation. She wants revenge." I turned to her calmly, letting my next words land like a final blow. "No, Melissa, I don't want revenge. I want respect. something you'll never understand because you've never had it, never earned it, and never given it." Her face twisted, her voice caught in her throat. She had no reply. I drew a breath and lifted my chin, the moment swelling. "You wanted me to crawl in here, broken, Harris. You wanted me to bow to your mother, to remind her of how worthless I was. But instead, I stand here with 2 children you swore I'd never have, and a life you'll never touch. You didn't shame me tonight. You freed me." The room erupted, not in scandalous whispers, but in applause. Some clapped slowly, others passionately, the sound rolling through the hall like thunder. Harris's face burned crimson. Melissa's eyes darted wildly, her grip on him loosening. Beulah held her grandchildren close, her tears soaking their shoulders. And I stood tall, my head high, my spirit unshaken. The day he meant for my humiliation had become my triumph. The applause didn't last long. It was awkward, hesitant, and quickly smothered by the thick discomfort clinging to the hall. Harris's humiliation lay raw on the floor, but pride is a stubborn thing. It doesn't die quietly. He straightened his tie, smoothed his suit, and tried to compose himself, though the tremor in his hands betrayed him. His smile, when it returned, was a mask so brittle it could shatter at a touch. "Congratulations, Loretta May," he said loudly, his voice laced with mockery. "You raised 2 children. Bravo! But don't fool yourself into thinking that makes you somebody. Anybody can have kids. It doesn't make you special." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Lily pressed closer to me, James still clinging to my shoulder. I kissed his curls, my silence deliberate. Melissa seized the moment, her shrill voice bouncing off the walls. "Exactly! Look at her, parading them around like trophies. A dress, a necklace, a couple of children, and suddenly she thinks she's royalty? Harris has moved on. He has wealth, influence, respect. She has... what? A sad story. And pity." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some avoided her eyes, others leaned forward, waiting for me to respond. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You mistake silence for emptiness, Melissa. But silence is strength. The kind of strength you can't fake with borrowed money or empty words." A hush rippled. Harris's smirk faltered. Beulah spoke then, her voice softer, but strained. "Loretta May, you said you built something. What did you mean?" Her question cut through the tension like a blade. Every head turned to me, curiosity lighting the room. Harris stiffened, panic flashing in his eyes. "She's bluffing," he snapped quickly. "Don't give her the stage, Mama. She's just trying to show me up, make me look small." I turned to him, calm and steady. "You don't need my help to look small, Harris. You've managed that all on your own." A low murmur of laughter rippled across the guests, though quickly hushed. I faced Beulah again. "When Harris left me, I had nothing. Not a roof, not a dime, not even a friend in this family. But I worked, I studied, I built. I opened a business with the little I had, and when it grew, I opened another, and another." Gasps spread like fire. Melissa barked a laugh, though it cracked at the edges. "Oh, please. A little shop selling biscuits, maybe. Don't exaggerate." "Not a shop," I said simply. "A chain. 3 bakeries, then 5. Now more than a dozen across 3 states. And I don't just bake anymore. I distribute, I employ, I invest. What started in my kitchen is now a company with over 100 employees, families that feed their children because of what I built." The silence was deafening. Eyes widened. Beulah's hand gripped her cane so tight her knuckles whitened. Harris sputtered. That's impossible. You couldn't..." "I couldn't?" My voice sharpened. "You said that when I wanted to go back to school. You said that when I suggested saving for a home. You said that every time I had a dream. And now here I stand, living proof that your words were nothing but lies you told yourself to hide your own failures." Melissa's face twisted, but she recovered with venom. "You're making it up. If you had all that, we would have heard about it. People would know. You wouldn't be some mystery showing up at a party." I leaned forward slightly, my tone even. Not everyone announces their success from rooftops. Some of us let our work speak for us. But if you need proof, check the catering trays in this hall. Every dish, every roll of bread, every slice of cake, they came from my company. This party was fed by me before I ever walked through the door. A collective gasp burst across the room. Heads whipped toward the buffet tables, the servers, the plates in front of them. Beulah's eyes widened, realization dawning like a sunrise. Harris looked as though the floor had given way beneath him. Melissa blinked rapidly, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I stroked Lily's curls, kissed James's cheek, and let my words settle. I didn't come to brag. I didn't come to compete. I came because my children deserve to know their roots. But don't mistake my grace for weakness. The woman you cast aside is not the woman standing here now. You wanted me to come crawling. Instead, I came carrying an empire. The applause this time was louder, more certain. Some guests rose to their feet, clapping, nodding, their eyes alight with respect. Harris's face burned crimson. He banged his fist on the table, his voice cracking. "This is a trick, a scam. Don't believe her. She's nothing but a fraud." But his words sounded hollow, drowned beneath the tide of the crowd's shifting allegiance. Beulah's lips trembled as she looked at Lily and James, then back at me. Her voice, shaky but genuine, carried across the hall. "Loretta May, I was wrong about you." Her confession silenced even the whispers. "I mocked you, shunned you, treated you as if you were less. I believed my son's lies, but tonight I see the truth with my own eyes. You are not a failure. You are the daughter-in-law I should have cherished." Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back. This was not about me. This was about my children. "You don't have to make peace with me, Beulah," I said softly. "But if you want to know these children, if you want them in your life, then you have to accept the truth. They are yours, no matter how much Harris fights it." She reached for Lily again, pulling the little girl into her arms. James squirmed, and I let him down to toddle over. Beulah wept openly, clutching both children, her shoulders shaking with decades of regret. The sight cracked the hall open like thunder. Melissa hissed, her voice low but audible. "This is ridiculous. Beulah, don't let her fool you. She's stealing your son's legacy, poisoning your mind against him." Beulah lifted her head, her tear-streaked face fierce for the first time. "No, Melissa. My son poisoned his own legacy. She gave me back what he tried to take. Family. You gave me nothing but shame." Melissa's face blanched, her nails digging into Harris's arm. He flinched, pulling away, his mask of composure fully gone. For the first time, it wasn't me they saw as the outsider. It was them. I stood taller. My children safe in their grandmother's arms, my truth unshaken. Harris had brought me here to shame me, but the only thing exposed tonight was his emptiness. And the night was far from over. Harris's mask finally split, the charming grin, the self-assured swagger, the son who could do no wrong, gone. What stood before us now was a desperate man clawing at the last threads of control. "You're all blind!" His voice cracked as he paced in front of the head table, sweat soaking his collar. "She's feeding you lies. This is a stunt. Don't you see it? She's trying to ruin me because she couldn't keep me." Some guests looked away in discomfort. Others shook their heads. The tide was gone. Harris was shouting against a current that no longer carried him. Melissa tried to recover the moment, her hand tightening around his wrist. "Don't listen to her," she said sharply. "She's bitter. She's making herself look good by tearing Harris down. That's all this is. An act." But her voice was trembling too, and the crowd could smell fear. Beulah, holding Lily and James in her arms, lifted her head. The tears still shone on her cheeks, but her voice carried iron. "Enough, Harris." He froze. Her hand stroked Lily's curls, her gaze locked on her son. "I believed you all these years. I let you fill my ears with poison against this woman. I let you convince me she was less than us. And now I see the truth. She raised the children you denied me. She built the fortune you never could. She carried herself with more grace than you ever had." Gasps scattered through the hall like sparks. Beulah's words sliced sharper than any insult I could have delivered. Harris's mouth opened and closed. "Mama, no! You don't understand." But she cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You lied to me. You lied to all of us. And now your lies are standing in front of me, living, breathing, undeniable." She kissed the top of James's head, her tears wetting his curls. Harris turned on me, his eyes wild, veins bulging in his neck. "You think you've won, Loretta May? You think walking in here with kids and some money makes you better than me? You'll never be me. You'll never wear this family's name with honor." I held his gaze without blinking. "You're right, Harris. I'll never be you. Because I don't destroy the people I claim to love. I don't trade dignity for pride. I don't hide weakness with cruelty. No, I'll never be you. And thank God for that." The words hit like a hammer. Guests murmured, nodding, whispering among themselves. Melissa, desperate to salvage her standing, hissed like a cornered snake. "She's lying. Look at her, draped in jewels, boasting about her fortune, dangling those children like bait. If you side with her, you're siding with a manipulator. She's no saint, she's a schemer." The laughter that followed didn't belong to me. It came from the guests. A short, incredulous burst, because Melissa's words rang hollow now. She had played the wrong card too late. "Funny," I said, tilting my head. "A schemer is exactly what you've been all these years. Whispering in Harris's ear, feeding his ego, helping him bury the truth. Tell me, Melissa, what did you really gain standing at his side all this time? Did he give you respect? Did he give you a legacy? Did he even give you children?" Her face blanched. I let the silence hang, sharp and cutting. "No, he gave you scraps, and you called it a feast." Melissa's hand dropped from Harris's arm. She turned her face away, but the damage was done. The room shifted again. Beulah clutched her grandchildren. The guests leaned closer, their eyes now fixed on me, not as a victim, not as a scandal, but as a woman who had reclaimed her dignity. I breathed deeply and let my voice soften, but not weaken. I didn't come here to gloat. I came here to show my children who they are, to let them stand in front of the people who once erased their mother and see that the truth stands taller than lies. Harris, you invited me here to shame me, but shame only sticks if you carry it. I don't carry it anymore. You do. Harris staggered back, his mouth working soundlessly. A guest stood suddenly, clapping slowly, then another. Soon the sound swelled until it roared through the hall. Not polite applause this time, but defiant, deliberate, like a verdict delivered. Harris and Melissa stood alone in the storm of their own undoing, and I stood taller than I ever had. Beulah's eyes met mine, glistening with tears. "Loretta May," she said hoarsely, "I can't take back what I did. I can't undo the years I made you feel small, but tonight I see you for who you are. You are stronger than any of us ever gave you credit for, and if you'll allow it, I want to know my grandchildren. I want to make things right." My throat tightened, but I nodded. "They deserve a grandmother who sees them, who loves them. If you're willing to be that, then yes, you'll know them." Lily smiled shyly. James reached his tiny hand toward Beulah's pearls. The hall softened around us. A rare moment of healing in the midst of wreckage. Harris barked one last, desperate laugh, though it cracked in the middle. "You all think she's some hero. She's not. She's just a woman with luck on her side. And you," he pointed at the guests, "you're all fools for believing her." But his words were drowned in silence. Nobody stood with him, not even Melissa. I took a step closer, my voice quiet but firm enough for all to hear. "Harris, listen to me. This moment could have been yours too. You could have been a father your children looked up to, a son your mother admired, a man your community respected. But you chose arrogance, you chose lies, and now all you have left is emptiness." He flinched as though the words struck his very bones. And then I turned to the crowd, my eyes sweeping the room. You've all witnessed what happens when pride destroys love, when arrogance blinds truth, when lies bury families. I stand here not for revenge, but as a warning. Don't let pride make you a Harris. Don't let bitterness make you a Melissa. Stand for truth. Stand for dignity. Stand for family. A hush, powerful and heavy, filled the room. If you believe families should be built on love and not lies, then hit subscribe right now. Only the arrogant, the manipulators, the Harrises and Melissas of this world would walk away from this story without standing for truth. And if you refuse to subscribe, at least comment and tell us why. Because silence only helps the liars win. The music never resumed. The guests, though still buzzing with whispers, slowly drifted back to their meals, their laughter, their polite chatter, as if trying to sow normalcy over the rip in the evening. But the night was already carved into memory. Beulah stayed seated with Lily and James, her arms wrapped tightly around them, as though making up for years of absence in a single embrace. Her tears fell into their hair, but her smile, soft, trembling, was unlike anything I'd ever seen on her face. For the first time, she looked not like a queen presiding over subjects, but like a grandmother with her heart cracked wide open. Melissa had slunk to the far side of the room, her lipstick smudged, her eyes darting like a trapped cat. Her claws were dulled now. She stood alone, holding her glass with trembling fingers, sipping bitter wine she could barely swallow. And Harris? Harris wasn't finished. I knew it by the way his eyes followed me across the hall, burning holes into my back. He was a man cornered, humiliated in front of everyone who once admired him. Pride doesn't die in silence. It roars in desperation. So when he slipped out of the dining hall through the side doors, I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was Beulah's hand brushing my arm as I rose to follow him. "Loretta May," she whispered hoarsely, "don't let him break you again." Her words clung to me as I left my children in her care and stepped into the dim corridor. The hallway outside the dining hall was darker, quieter, the hum of voices muffled by heavy doors. Harris stood at the far end, his back to me, his shoulders rigid. I took a slow breath and walked toward him. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor. He turned before I reached him, his face shadowed under the sconces. "Why?" His voice was low, ragged. "Why'd you come here tonight? Wasn't it enough that you left me with nothing? Did you have to drag me through the mud in front of everybody?" I folded my arms, steady. "You invited me, Harris, remember? You wanted me here. You thought I'd come crawling, broken, ashamed. You never imagined I'd walk in with my head high." His jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring. "You think you won, don't you? With your pretty dress and your children and your business." He spat the word as if it were filth. "But you didn't win. You stole. You stole years from me, my dignity, my family's respect." I cut him off. "You gave all that away, Harris. You handed it over every time you chose a bottle over your marriage, every time you let Melissa whisper in your ear, every time you let pride crush the love we had. Don't you dare blame me for the holes you dug." His fists clenched, trembling at his sides. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand," I snapped, my voice slicing through the hall. "I understand you were too afraid to face the truth about yourself, that it was easier to call me barren than admit your own weakness. I understand you hid behind your mama's love while letting her tear me apart. I understand you wanted me to be small so you could feel big, and I understand that now, tonight, you finally see that you can't break me anymore." The words echoed, sharp and unflinching. Harris flinched as if each one was a lash across his pride. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with years unsaid. Then his voice cracked, softer than I expected. "I did love you, Loretta May. Once." My throat tightened. "But I didn't let it show." "Maybe you did. But love without respect isn't love. It's control. And that's all you ever wanted with me. Control." His face twisted. "And what about them?" He jabbed a finger back toward the dining hall. "You raised them without me. You kept them from me. Do you know what it feels like? Knowing my own children don't even know my name? The words struck deeper than I cared to admit. For a moment, guilt tugged at me, but only for my children, never for him. They don't know your name, I said quietly, because you never earned it. You forfeited that the day you left me. I didn't keep them from you, Harris. You kept yourself from them. His chest rose and fell sharply, his breathing ragged. Melissa's voice cut suddenly through the quiet, sharp and venomous. She's right, Harris. We both turned. She stood in the doorway, her eyes cold, her smile twisted. You kept yourself from them. You kept yourself from me. You lied to me, to your mother, to everyone. You let me carry your shame while she carried your children. She stepped closer, her heels clicking like claws against marble. You promised me everything. Said I was your future, your redemption. But tonight, everyone saw the truth. You're nothing. Harris recoiled as though her words were acid. Don't you start, Melissa. I should have known, she hissed. A man who betrays his wife will betray his mistress too. You gave me nothing but your leftovers, and now you have nothing left to give. Her voice cracked, not with rage, but with humiliation. She turned sharply, storming back toward the dining hall, her figure swallowed by the shadows. Harris sagged against the wall, his hands over his face. For a moment, he wasn't the proud, strutting man who left me. He was just broken, small, weak, desperate. But that brokenness was his burden, not mine. I stepped closer, but only enough for my words to reach him. Harris, I didn't come here to punish you. I came to free myself, to free my children, to show them that truth always stands taller than lies. You'll have to live with what you've done. But me? I've already moved on. He lowered his hands slowly, his eyes hollow. And what am I supposed to do now? I studied him for a moment. The man I had once loved, the man I had once built my world around, stood stripped of everything he thought made him powerful. Start by telling the truth, I said softly, even if it's just to yourself. And then I turned, my heels echoing down the corridor, leaving him alone in the darkness he had chosen. Back in the dining hall, Beulah rose as I entered. She held Lily and James by the hand, her tears replaced by a fragile smile. They're beautiful, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for bringing them here. I touched her arm gently. Thank them. They're the reason I kept going. And as my children pressed close to me, I knew this battle wasn't just about Harris anymore. It was about legacy. It was about healing. And it was about the life I had built, the life I was finally ready to claim out loud. When I stepped back into the hall, the atmosphere had shifted. The air wasn't thick with whispers anymore. It was alive with cautious energy, like everyone knew they had just witnessed something that would be retold for years. The clink of glasses had returned. The murmur of conversations hummed again, but the focus was no longer on Beulah's birthday. It was on me. Dozens of eyes followed as I walked to the table where Beulah sat with Lily and James. She held their hands as though afraid they might slip away if she let go. Her tears had dried, but her cheeks still glistened. Come, sit, she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard. It was almost pleading. Sit with me, Loretta May. Sit with your children. I hesitated only a moment before lowering myself into the chair beside her. Lily nestled against her grandmother's shoulder. James tugged at the strings of her pearls. Beulah laughed, a sound so foreign from her lips it startled me. They're bright, she whispered, so full of life. Her eyes softened as they turned to me. You raised them well. Better than I ever thought possible. Her words carried no malice now, only regret, and perhaps admiration. The guests edged closer, some abandoning their tables to hover within earshot. They weren't here for food or music anymore. They were here for the story. A woman in emerald earrings leaned in, her voice careful. Loretta May, is it true what you said earlier about your company? I felt the weight of the room shift toward me again. Harris had returned quietly, standing stiffly in the corner, his face pale, his eyes hollow. Melissa was nowhere to be seen. I lifted my chin. Yes, I started with nothing. A stove in a one-room apartment, bread, pies, cakes. It was all I knew to do, and people came. Then they came back. One store turned to 3, then 5, then 10. Today, I employ over 100 people across 3 states. And every dish you tasted tonight, every roll, every cake, was made by my company's hands. Gasps, murmurs, heads turned to the buffet, to the servers, to their plates, as though the food itself confirmed my words. Beulah blinked, her lips parting. "You mean tonight's feast was mine," I said simply. Before I ever walked through those doors, I had already fed this family. The woman you dismissed has been at your table longer than you realized. Her cane trembled in her hand. Lord have mercy. The applause came, but it wasn't the scattered claps of earlier. It was steady, deliberate, a rising tide of respect. Some stood, others nodded deeply, their eyes alight. She built all that? On her own? Incredible. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I let their awe wash over me, not because I needed it, but because the girl I once was, the one Harris and Beulah broke down, deserved to hear it. Beulah reached for my hand. Her fingers were frail, trembling, but they squeezed mine with surprising strength. "I was wrong, Loretta May," she whispered, her voice raw. "I thought you were nothing but a burden to my son. I thought you were weak. I mocked you for years. And yet, look what you became." Her tears fell fresh, this time without shame. "You've given me what I thought I'd never have, grandchildren, and you've shown me what true strength looks like. I can never undo the way I treated you, but if you'll allow it, I want to make it right. I want to be a part of their lives, of yours." The hall fell silent, watching. I studied her face, the woman who had once sneered at me across dinner tables, who had called me barren, who had laughed at my tears. And now, broken by truth, she reached for grace. I squeezed her hand gently. "If you're ready to love them, Beulah, then yes, they deserve a grandmother, and I'll never stand in their way of having one." Her sobs broke into laughter as she pulled Lily and James into her arms again. The sight drew fresh applause, this time tinged with joy. But not everyone celebrated. From the corner, Harris's voice sliced through the warmth like ice. "You're all fools." The applause died abruptly. Heads turned. Harris stepped forward, his hands clenched, his face pale, but his eyes burning. "She's got you all wrapped around her finger. Don't you see? She's playing you. She doesn't care about family. She cares about revenge." The words fell flat. They no longer carried the weight they once had. "Revenge?" I asked softly, rising to my feet. "If this were revenge, I would have stayed away. Let you rot in your lies. Let your mother never know her grandchildren. But I came here tonight because truth matters, because love matters, because these children matter." I placed my hands gently on Lily and James's shoulders. "You wanted me here to shame me, but shame has a way of finding its rightful owner." The crowd murmured in agreement. Harris's fists shook, but he couldn't find words strong enough to push back. Melissa reappeared then, her makeup streaked, her dress wrinkled, a glass still clutched in her hand. She swayed slightly, her eyes red. "Don't listen to her," she croaked, her voice rough from drink and rage. "She's a fraud. She's nothing. Her words cracked. Her body shook. And then, in front of them all, she collapsed into a chair, covering her face with her hands. The venom had drained out of her, leaving only a hollow shell. Gasps rippled. Harris moved toward her, but she shoved his hand away. "Don't touch me," she spat. "You lied to me too." The crowd whispered louder. The humiliation was complete, not mine, but theirs. I gathered my children close, my voice firm but calm. Tonight isn't about me or Harris or Melissa. Tonight is about truth. And truth is simple. I was cast aside, but I rose again. I was mocked, but I built something no mockery could destroy. I was called barren, but I brought life into this world. And tonight, I return not as the woman you left broken, but as the woman who cannot be broken again." The applause roared, louder than ever. Beulah stood with Lily and James, her arm wrapped around them, her head bowed as though in prayer. And Harris? He stood alone, his empire of lies in ashes, his pride stripped bare. I didn't need to say more. The night had spoken for me. But I knew as I sat with my children and their grandmother that the road ahead wasn't finished. Healing doesn't come in a single night. It comes step by step, choice by choice. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to walk it. The room began to settle again, the hum of voices softening as servers replaced empty plates and refreshed glasses. But the party wasn't really a party anymore. It was a reckoning. I sat with Lily and James at my side. Beulah perched close, her eyes still shining with unshed tears. The weight of the night hung over us, but it wasn't heavy for me anymore. For once, the heaviness belonged to Harris. Someone at the far end of the table leaned forward, curiosity shining. "Loretta May," the man said. "Forgive me, but I need to ask. How did you do it? How did you go from everything you went through to this?" All eyes turned again. The air shifted. It wasn't accusation. It was hunger. They wanted to know the story. I drew in a slow breath, my gaze dropping briefly to my children's faces. "You want to know how I got here?" I asked softly. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was survival. And it started the night I walked out of this family's house for the last time. Rain hammered the pavement. My suitcase was small, its zipper weak, its contents spilling out each time I tried to force it shut. Harris didn't come to the door to see me off. Beulah had watched from the window, arms folded, lips curved into the faintest smile of satisfaction. I remember standing in that driveway, soaked to the bone, wondering how a woman could give her entire self to a man, only to be discarded like spoiled milk. My bank account had less than $50. My dignity felt even lower. I spent that first week on a friend's couch, slept with my suitcase at my feet. Every night I told myself I wouldn't cry, but I did. Quiet, muffled sobs that burned my throat until I fell asleep. And then came the sickness. At first, I thought it was grief twisting my stomach, but when I missed 2 cycles, I knew. I went to a clinic alone, trembling, clutching the paper bag they handed me as though it held a bomb. Pregnant, Harris's child, or rather, children, twins. I had walked away with nothing but humiliation, but inside me, life was growing. 2 tiny heartbeats, 2 reasons not to collapse. Gasps rippled around the table. Even Beulah clutched her pearls tighter. "You were pregnant when you left him?" someone whispered. I nodded. Yes, and I didn't tell him. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I had nothing left to trust him with, not even the truth of their existence. I needed to protect them from his pride, his cruelty, his indifference. I glanced across the hall. Harris stood frozen, his face chalk white, his hand gripping the back of a chair so tightly his knuckles blanched. He looked as though the floor had vanished beneath him. Beulah pressed her lips together, tears trembling. She whispered, "Lord, forgive me." Those early years weren't golden. They were brutal. I worked mornings at a diner, evenings cleaning offices, nights baking bread in a borrowed kitchen. I nursed Lily with one arm while stirring batter with the other. I rocked James's cradle with my foot while folding laundry. There were nights I thought I would break. When the bills outnumbered the dollars, when exhaustion pressed on my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. But every time I looked into their faces, soft cheeks, bright eyes, I knew I couldn't afford to stop. People whispered about me. That poor girl. Thrown away. She'll never make it. And for a while, I almost believed them. Until one day, I delivered a tray of pies to the diner owner where I worked. He tasted one, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Girl, why are you scrubbing tables when you could be selling these for triple the price?" That was the spark. I smiled faintly, remembering. I started with 1 pie, then 3, then 10. I sold them out of the diner kitchen at first. People laughed when they saw me hauling boxes on buses, but they weren't laughing when those pies started selling out before noon. Word spread. Demand grew. I rented a tiny space. I hired 2 women, both single mothers like me, then 4, then 10. We became a family of our own, baking not just food, but hope. The room listened in rapt silence. No glass clinked, no whispers stirred. Beulah whispered hoarsely, "And I mocked you for not giving me grandchildren, while you were already carrying them inside you." Her shoulders shook. "I called you empty, when you were more full than I ever imagined." Her words pierced the hall. Some guests wiped their eyes. Harris suddenly lurched forward, his voice ragged, desperate. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? Anything?" The room bristled. I turned, meeting his wide, desperate eyes. "And what would you have done, Harris? Claimed them like trophies? Used them as proof you weren't the problem? Or worse, left them feeling the same abandonment you left me with?" "No, I couldn't risk their hearts on a man who couldn't hold mine." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air seemed to still. Harris staggered back, his lips parting but no words coming. By the time Lily and James were 3, I had a storefront. By the time they were 5, 2 more. I never missed a recital, never missed a bedtime story, even when I worked until dawn. I brought them into the kitchen, let them stir, let them taste. We built everything together. Flour on our clothes, laughter in the air. Success wasn't just mine, it was ours. And when the day came that a regional grocery chain called and offered to stock my pies in every store, I knew I had built something no betrayal could erase. I looked down at Lily and James now, their hands wrapped around mine. "They saved me," I said simply. "They were my reason, my strength, my future." Back to the present. Beulah leaned closer, her voice barely more than a whisper. "And you saved them. You gave them what this house never gave you, love without condition." Her words cracked something deep in me. For years I had carried bitterness toward her, toward this family. But tonight, in this hall, with my children's faces bright and the truth unveiled, the bitterness loosened its grip. I didn't forgive everything. Not yet. But I could see the path. The hall erupted in applause again, louder, longer, shaking the very air. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, their faces glowing with awe. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider in this house. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the woman I had fought to become, victorious, whole, unbreakable. The applause still echoed when Harris suddenly slammed his hand against the table. The sound cracked through the hall like a whip, cutting the clapping short. "Enough!" he barked, his voice strained, trembling with desperation. "You've all been fooled. Don't you see? This is her game. Loretta May always knew how to play the victim. She paints herself as a saint while dragging my name through the dirt." The room stiffened, uneasy murmurs rippling. A few loyal friends of his family exchanged uncertain glances. The tension tilted like a seesaw, balance teetering. I rose slowly, resting a hand on Lily's shoulder. My voice was calm, even. If telling the truth is playing the victim, then perhaps the truth has been long overdue. Harris's laugh was bitter, sharp. "Truth? You kept my children from me. They were never yours to claim," I cut in, my tone slicing like glass. "Fatherhood isn't biology, Harris. It's presence, it's care, it's sacrifice. And on those counts, you failed before you ever had the chance to begin." Gasps rippled. Harris's face reddened, his chest heaving. A voice rose from the crowd, an older cousin of Beulah's, her hair silver, her eyes keen. "Harris, we all watched you tear her down, watched you let your mama spit on her name. You can't rewrite what we saw with our own eyes." Another voice joined. "You told us she couldn't bear children. You made us believe it. And yet, here they are." Harris staggered back, his grip on the narrative slipping like sand through fingers. "Lies," he muttered hoarsely. All of you. You don't know what it was like. She wasn't enough. She never was. Beulah's cane struck the floor with a sharp crack as she pushed herself to her feet. Stop it, Harris. The hall went still. Beulah's voice, though shaking, rang with a clarity no one dared challenge. For years, I believed your every word. I called her barren. I mocked her. I looked at her with disdain, and I thought myself justified because I was blinded by my love for you. But tonight, her voice broke, tears sliding down her cheeks. Tonight, I've seen the truth, and I will not let you trample it under your pride any longer. She reached for my hand, pulling me gently to stand beside her. This woman gave me what I thought I'd never have. She gave me grandchildren. She built a life stronger than any of us imagined, and she did it alone. You call her not enough? Son, she is more than enough, more than you could ever deserve. The words struck like a hammer. Guests murmured in agreement, some nodding, some clapping softly. Harris's jaw dropped, his own mother's betrayal cutting deeper than any wound I could give. Melissa staggered forward, her wine glass trembling in her grip. Her mascara was smeared, her eyes swollen. She let out a bitter laugh that rattled through the hall. Don't you see, Harris? She hissed. You've lost. Not just her. Not just them. Me too. Everything. You spent your life trying to make yourself bigger by making others small. And now look at you. Nothing but a shadow in a room full of truth. She hurled her glass to the floor. It shattered, shards scattering like the remnants of their affair. Melissa turned on her heel and stormed out, her heels echoing like nails in a coffin. No one followed her. Harris's face crumpled. He looked from Beulah to me, to the children, to the guests whose eyes no longer mirrored admiration, but pity. You don't understand, he whispered, his voice raw. I gave everything for this family, for respect, for something, and she took it all from me. I stepped closer, my voice low but unyielding. You lost it all because you built it on lies. Respect can't be demanded, Harris. It's earned. And the truth is, the only thing I ever took from you was the power to break me again. He flinched, as if the words themselves carried weight. A murmur rose among the guests, spreading like fire. She's right. He was always cruel. We should have seen it sooner. The tide had turned, irrevocably. Harris stumbled back, his hand gripping the edge of the table. His face was pale, his breath shallow. He looked like a man drowning in air. Beulah's hand tightened on mine. Her voice trembled, but was fierce. Son, tonight I choose truth. I choose her. I choose these children. If you cannot humble yourself, then you will stand alone. Her declaration was final, a line drawn in the sand. Harris opened his mouth, but no sound came. He looked once more at the faces surrounding him. Faces that once held loyalty, but now gleamed with judgment, even disgust. His shoulders sagged, his fight spent. He turned and walked out. No words, no farewell. Just the hollow echo of footsteps retreating into the night. The silence he left behind was heavier than any words he might have spoken. I exhaled slowly, steadying my voice. The past cannot be undone, but it can be redeemed, and I will not let bitterness poison what I've built. I looked at Beulah, who was still weeping quietly, clutching Lily's and James's hands. Then I looked at the guests, their faces open, waiting. This is not the story of my shame, I said, lifting my chin. This is the story of my survival, and survival is victory enough. The hall erupted, not with polite applause, but with thunderous cheers, the kind that rattled glass and shook walls. In that sound, Harris's legacy crumbled for good, and in its place, mine rose. The echo of applause still rang in the air, long after Harris's footsteps vanished into silence. But what lingered more deeply wasn't the clapping or the murmurs of guests. It was the way Lily had squeezed my hand, the way James had looked up at me with wide, proud eyes. They didn't fully understand the weight of what had just happened. They were too young to grasp betrayal and redemption, lies and legacy. But they understood enough. Their mama had stood tall, and no one, not even the man who once claimed power over her, had managed to pull her down. And that was enough. The hall began to settle again, though the atmosphere was transformed. No longer was it Beulah's birthday dinner. It had become something else entirely. A reckoning, a revelation, a celebration of resilience. Beulah wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, her cane rattling softly against the floor as she rose. "Come," she said, her voice trembling but insistent. "Come with me." She didn't wait for me to ask where. She simply took Lily's hand, motioned for James to follow, and began walking toward the grand double doors that led out of the banquet hall. I glanced at the crowd, still buzzing, still watching, and then followed. The house was quieter in the side corridors, the party sounds dimming behind us. Beulah led us toward a parlor at the back of the estate, a smaller room lit with soft golden lamps and lined with bookshelves. It smelled faintly of lavender and old wood polish. She lowered herself into a wide armchair, her breath uneven. The children clambered onto the sofa across from her, their laughter breaking the heavy silence. James spotted a carved wooden horse on the shelf and tugged it down, trotting it along the armrest. Lily curled against me, humming to herself. For the first time all night, it felt normal. Not a battlefield, not a performance, just family. Beulah cleared her throat, her eyes fixed on the children. "Loretta May," she began slowly, "I need to say what I should have said years ago." Her gaze lifted to mine, her eyes red, her voice raw. "I was cruel to you, crueler than I had any right to be. I let my pride in my son blind me to the truth of your worth. I saw your tears and mocked them. I saw your effort and dismissed it. And when you left, I thought I was rid of a burden. But tonight," her voice cracked, "tonight I see the burden was never you. It was the lies I clung to." Her words landed heavy in the quiet room. I felt them in my chest, stirring memories I had long buried, dinners where my silence was treated like weakness, mornings where my efforts went unnoticed, evenings where Harris's failures became my blame. I swallowed hard. "Beulah, I don't know if I can forgive all of it. Not yet." Her eyes brimmed with tears again, and she nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to, but I want to try. If you'll let me, I want to try. For them." She looked at Lily and James, her voice breaking. "For the grandchildren I never thought I'd have." James hopped off the sofa, wooden horse in hand, and toddled over to her. "You can play with me," he said matter-of-factly, placing the toy in her lap. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then Beulah let out a shaky laugh, pressing her hand over her mouth. "Lord have mercy," she whispered, tears falling freely. She bent down as much as her frail body allowed and pressed a trembling kiss to his hair. Lily followed, climbing into her grandmother's lap, resting her head against Beulah's shoulder. The sight twisted something inside me, something old and hard, but slowly cracking. For years, Beulah had been the face of my pain, the sharp tongue behind Harris's cruelty, and yet here she was, arms wrapped tightly around the very children who had been my salvation. And she was weeping as if she'd found gold she never deserved to touch. I sat back, watching, my throat thick. It would have been easier to cling to bitterness, to remind her of every word she'd ever hurled at me. But watching Lily giggle against her shoulder, watching James proudly teach her how to make the horse gallop across her lap, I realized bitterness was heavy, and I'd carried it long enough. Letting it go didn't mean erasing the past. It meant choosing not to let it chain me anymore. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet. "If you want to try, Beulah, I'll try too." Her eyes shot up to mine, wide and wet. She nodded, clutching Lily closer, whispering, "Thank you." The moment lingered in quiet tenderness, broken only by the children's laughter. For a while, no one spoke of Harris, or Melissa, or shame, or betrayal. We just sat there, the four of us, in a parlor where silence didn't feel like emptiness anymore, but like space to breathe, to begin again. Later, when the children dozed off on the sofa, their heads resting against each other, Beulah spoke again. "Loretta May, how did you do it?" Her voice wasn't sharp now, not demanding, not mocking. It was curious, humble. I thought for a long moment before answering. "Day by day," I said simply. "Some days I thought I'd never make it. Some nights I cried myself to sleep. But I never let my children see me give up. I couldn't. They were watching. And I wanted them to know their mama didn't bend to cruelty, that she rose." Beulah's lip trembled. "You rose higher than any of us." Her words landed heavy again, but this time, not like stones, like bricks building a bridge. We sat in the glow of the lamp until the children stirred, rubbing sleepy eyes. Beulah kissed them both gently on the forehead before I gathered them in my arms. As I carried them out of the parlor, I glanced back. Beulah was still in her chair, her cane leaning against her leg, her face bowed into her hands, but her shoulders shook with quiet sobs, not of bitterness this time, but of release. And I knew, as much as healing had begun for me, it had begun for her too. The house had quieted, but not in that uneasy way of earlier. This quiet felt softer, like an exhale after a storm. The children had woken refreshed from their little nap on the sofa, their energy back in full force, bounding around the parlor with the reckless joy only children seemed to know. James had found an old chessboard tucked in one corner and immediately decided the pawns were soldiers in an imaginary war. Lily danced between the armchairs in her socks, humming a tune she half remembered from some cartoon, twirling like the floor itself was her stage. Beulah watched them with a smile that didn't seem possible on her face just hours earlier. Her laughter, light, almost girlish, bubbled out as James insisted the bishop was the captain and demanded his grandmother make sound effects for explosions. "Boom!" she croaked, making her cane knock against the floor. James squealed with delight. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, shaking my head with a soft chuckle. If someone had told me years ago that this woman, the one who once dismissed me like dirt under her shoes, would be giggling with my children on the floor of her own parlor, I would have called it madness. And yet, here we were. Beulah glanced at me, her eyes shining. "You know," she said softly, "I never thought I'd laugh like this again. Not at my age. Not after all the things I let pride take from me." Her voice wasn't heavy now, but wistful, tinged with the humility of someone rediscovering life too late. "Maybe it's not too late," I replied, surprising even myself. She studied me, and for a long moment we simply looked at each other. No walls, no barbs, just two women, once rivals, now tethered by children, by truth, by the raw mess of family. The children soon demanded a story. "Tell us about when Mama was little," Lily chirped, climbing into Beulah's lap. I nearly protested, but Beulah chuckled. "Well, I didn't know your mama when she was little, but I can tell you a story from when I first met her." My chest tightened. What memory would she choose? One of her insults? Her cold silences? But Beulah surprised me. She smiled down at Lily. "I remember she wore a yellow dress that day. Nervous as a rabbit, but her smile could have lit up this whole house, and I thought, my son is a fool, but at least he's brought home a woman with light in her eyes." The children beamed. I blinked back tears. Beulah's gaze met mine as she finished softly. "I never told her that. I should have, but it's the truth." For once, I didn't hide the tears. I let them fall. Later, when the children had exhausted themselves with play and snacks, I tucked them into the guest room prepared for them. James mumbled something about his wooden horse before sleep tugged him under. Lily curled against him, her small hand resting protectively over her brother's. I lingered a moment, smoothing back their hair, watching their steady breaths. My heart swelled with pride. No matter how twisted the path, these children were the proof of everything I had endured. When I returned to the parlor, Beulah was waiting, a cup of tea trembling in her hands. She looked older suddenly, smaller, her pride stripped away. "Loretta May," she said quietly, "I need you to hear this. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me another chance. But if you let me, I will spend the rest of my days loving those children the way I should have loved you. It won't erase the past, but it's all I can give." Her words pierced me, not as wounds, but as offerings. For years I had prayed for recognition, for truth. And now here it was, not in grandeur, not in spectacle, but in this fragile confession. I nodded slowly. "Then let's start there." Her tears spilled over, and she whispered, "Thank you." The bonding didn't stop at words. Before long, Beulah insisted on showing me and the children old family albums. She shuffled slowly to a cabinet, pulling out thick leather-bound books, dust rising as she laid them on the coffee table. The children squealed at the sepia photographs. "Is that you, Grandma?" Lily pointed at a younger Beulah in a wide-brimmed hat. "Indeed it is," Beulah said proudly, tapping the picture. "Your grandma was the belle of her church picnic. Every boy lined up for lemonade, but I knew they just wanted my smile." We laughed, even me. For the first time, I saw not the woman who sneered at me, but the girl she once was, the girl who had dreams before bitterness hardened her. The warmth of the evening was interrupted only briefly by a sound that sent a chill down my spine. A door slammed somewhere deeper in the house. Hard. Beulah froze. My back stiffened. The children didn't notice, too busy giggling over old photographs, but the adults exchanged a wary glance. "He's still here," Beulah murmured. I swallowed hard. Of course he is. Harris never leaves quietly. We said nothing more about it, not in front of the children. But the shadow of his presence lingered in the corners of the house, in the way the air shifted, in the quiet unease that threaded through the walls. Still, the night pressed on with laughter, with tea, with quiet bonding. When the children finally fell asleep for good, Beulah leaned back in her chair, exhausted but peaceful. "I never thought I'd say this," she murmured, "but this has been the happiest birthday I can remember. And it's because of you." Her words sank deep, not with pride, but with relief. Because for once, I felt seen, not as Harris's wife, not as the barren woman, not as the failure, but as myself, and that was worth more than any applause. The night had almost lulled me into a strange, fragile peace. The children were tucked into bed, their soft breathing a comfort. Beulah rested in her armchair, still smiling faintly, even through her exhaustion. The house was quieter now, the storm of earlier moments fading into something that almost felt safe. Almost. Because Harris was still somewhere inside these walls. I felt it before I heard it, the shift in air, the heaviness that pressed against the quiet like a predator circling prey. Then, bang, a door slammed. Hard. The sound rattled through the hallways, jolting Beulah awake. Her cane clattered against the floor as she struggled to rise. "Lord, help us," she whispered. The children stirred in the guest room. I hurried to hush them, whispering promises that everything was fine. But my chest burned. I knew Harris wasn't going to leave this night quietly. And I was right. He stormed into the parlor, his shirt rumpled, his tie hanging loose around his neck. His eyes were wild, glassy, and his face shone with sweat. He looked less like the polished man who once commanded respect and more like a cornered animal. "You think you can walk into my house," he spat, "and humiliate me in front of my mother, in front of my family?" "This isn't your house, Harris," I said calmly, stepping between him and Beulah. "It's hers, and tonight wasn't about you. It was about the truth." His laugh was sharp, bitter. "Truth? Don't talk to me about the truth, Loretta May. You've been lying for years. You kept my children from me." "They were never yours," I snapped, my voice trembling with fury. "You forfeited them the moment you chose pride and cruelty over love." Beulah's voice cracked behind me. "Harris, stop this madness!" But he wasn't listening. His anger had its own gravity, pulling him deeper. He lunged forward, not at me, but toward the guest room door where Lily and James were sleeping. "Then let's see if they even want a father." he sneered. A cold terror gripped me. I moved fast, blocking his path, my arms spread wide. "Don't you dare!" I hissed. "You will not touch them. Not tonight. Not ever." The room froze in that moment. My heart thundered, but I stood tall, refusing to move. Harris's chest rose and fell, his fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, but Beulah's cane struck the floor like thunder. "Enough!" she roared, her voice trembling but strong. "If you lay a hand on them, Harris, you'll answer to me, and I will not protect you any more." The weight of her words silenced even him. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, not of me, but of his own mother turning against him. The silence stretched until Harris's rage collapsed into hollow laughter. He staggered back, shaking his head. "Fine, fine. Keep your little empire, Loretta. Keep your children. Keep my mother, too. But know this. Without me, you're nothing. And one day, everyone will see it." He stumbled toward the door, his words spilling like venom. "You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." And then he was gone, his footsteps fading into the night. The children had woken by then, frightened by the noise. Lily clung to my waist, her small body trembling. James's eyes were wide, filled with fear he didn't yet understand. I bent low, pulling them into my arms. "Shh, it's all right. He won't hurt you. Not while I'm here." Beulah lowered herself back into her chair, her face pale but resolute. "Loretta May," she whispered. "Don't ever let him convince you otherwise. You are stronger than his shadow. Don't let his poison linger in you." Her words steadied me, though my hands still shook. Harris had tried to break me again, to claim a piece of me through fear, but he failed, because this time I wasn't alone. As the children settled back to sleep, I sat in the parlor, the weight of the night pressing down. Harris's words still echoed, "Without me, you're nothing." But deep down, I knew the truth. Without him, I was everything I was always meant to be. And if you're listening right now, if you've followed me through the betrayals, the lies, the cruelty, you know what Harris really is, a man who feeds off control, who thrives on breaking others down. So let me ask you, are you the kind of person who'd side with him? With the manipulators, the cruel, the ones who strip dignity away to feed their pride? If you believe women like Loretta May should never be silenced again, hit that subscribe button right now. Only the ones who'd side with Harris would sit quiet. And if you can't stand men who try to control through fear, leave a comment. I stand for truth. Don't let his voice win here. Let ours drown it out. The house had gone quiet again, but this quiet was brittle, fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. Beulah sat slumped in her chair, her hand gripping her cane with white knuckles. The children were back in bed, but their restless stirring told me they hadn't found peace. And I couldn't sit still. Every slam of a door, every gust of wind rattling the shutters sent my nerves on edge. Harris's parting words still echoed in my mind. "You'll regret this. You'll all regret this." It wasn't an empty threat. I knew him too well. The first sign came with the knock. It wasn't polite, wasn't hesitant. It was sharp, urgent, a knock that carried anger. I froze, every muscle tensing. Beulah looked up at me, her eyes wide. "Don't answer it," she whispered. But the knocking came again, harder this time. Then his voice, raw, furious. "Open this door, Loretta May!" I glanced at the children's door. Lily whimpered in her sleep. James stirred. My heart twisted. I had to end this before it woke them fully. I stepped to the door and opened it just enough to see him. Harris stood there, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild. But he wasn't alone. Two men stood at his side, distant cousins, ones who had always bent to his swagger. Their faces were hard, their bodies taut, like men prepared for a fight. "You think you can parade in here and make me look like a fool?" Harris spat. "Not in my family's house, not in front of my blood." My pulse quickened, but I held my ground. "This is your mother's house, Harris, and you've already done enough damage tonight." But his sneer deepened. "You don't get it, do you? Respect doesn't just vanish because you tell some sad little story. I still run this family. I still have a say." His cousins nodded behind him, their presence meant to intimidate. Beulah's cane struck the floor behind me. "You have no say here, Harris," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. She rose with difficulty, her body trembling, but her eyes blazing. "You've lost your claim tonight. This is my house, and I decide who belongs." Her words should have ended it, but Harris only laughed bitterly. "You think anyone will believe her after tonight?" he said, jabbing a finger toward me. "You think this little tale of pies and pennies makes her a saint? She's been lying for years, hiding my children from me, feeding you all stories about struggle and triumph. But what do you really know? Huh? What if those kids aren't even mine?" The words struck like a slap. Gasps rippled from the few lingering guests nearby. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face, but the children were within earshot, and I refused to let his venom become their lullaby. "Enough!" I snapped, my voice shaking with fury. "You will not use them as weapons, Harris, not anymore." But he smirked, sensing my restraint. "Then prove it. Prove they're mine, or admit they aren't." The cousins behind him chuckled darkly, feeding off his cruelty. "Ha!" Beulah's voice cracked, hoarse but strong. "You dare stand in my house on my birthday and insult your own flesh and blood?" "They're not my flesh and blood until I say so," Harris snarled. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. His words hung in the air, venomous, cruel, and for the first time I saw Beulah's face twist not with sorrow, but with rage. She hobbled forward, her cane striking the floor with each step. "You are no son of mine tonight," she said, her voice breaking. "Not until you learn what love is, not until you learn what it means to protect instead of destroy." Her declaration left him reeling. His mouth opened, but no words came. The cousins muttered, shifting uneasily. One whispered, "Maybe we should go." But Harris shoved him back, his fury boiling over. "No!" he roared. "You don't get to cut me out of my own bloodline. Not her, not you, not anyone." And then his eyes found me again, blazing with a hatred I had never seen before. "Mark my words, Loretta May. You may have won tonight, but I'll drag you down if it's the last thing I do." His voice cracked with the vow, venom dripping from every syllable. The children stirred again, this time fully awake. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, clutching her brother's hand. "Mama?" she whispered. "Why is he yelling?" The room stilled. Even Harris faltered, his eyes flicking to the children. Small, fragile, innocent. For a fleeting second, something like guilt crossed his face, but pride smothered it instantly, hardening his expression once more. "Go back to bed," he muttered, his voice hollow. But Lily didn't move. She clung tighter to James, her eyes wide with fear. And in that moment, Harris realized he had lost more than pride. He had lost the very thing he claimed to fight for, the right to call himself their father. Beulah's tears flowed freely as she reached for them, her voice trembling. "Come, babies. Don't you listen to him. You are loved. You are wanted. You are mine as much as you are your mama's." They ran to her, burying themselves in her embrace. And Harris, once towering, once untouchable, stood frozen, watching the last shreds of his power slip away in the arms of the family he had broken. When he finally turned and stormed out, the cousins trailing reluctantly behind him, the slam of the door shook the house to its bones. But this time, no one followed. No one tried to soothe him. He left not as the man of the house, not as the favored son, but as an exile in his own bloodline. The silence afterward was suffocating. My chest heaved, my hands trembling as I pulled Lily and James into my arms. Beulah, still weeping, stroked their hair, whispering prayers under her breath. We had survived his wrath again, but the wound he left cut deeper than any before. Because tonight he hadn't just tried to destroy me, he had tried to claim my children, and that was a line no mother could forgive. The slam of the door still reverberated through the house long after Harris was gone. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed his fury, humming with the violence of his absence. But inside the parlor, silence settled. A silence thick with exhaustion, with grief, with the fragile threads of hope trying to tie themselves back together. Lily and James huddled close against me, their small bodies trembling. I rocked them gently, pressing my lips to their hair. My heart still raced, but I forced my voice to steady. "It's all right, babies. He can't hurt you. Not while I'm here." Beulah sat across from us, her face pale, streaked with tears. Her cane leaned forgotten against the chair. For the first time in her life, she looked small. Not regal, not commanding, just small. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. "Loretta May, I failed you." The words hung between us, stark and heavy. I swallowed hard. "You failed me, yes, but worse, you failed them, your grandchildren. They could have grown up with love from this side of the family. Instead, they were hidden away because I knew this house wasn't safe." Her lips trembled. "I see that now. I see everything I refused to see before. And it's a weight I'll carry to my grave, but if there is a way to make it right, if you'll let me—" She broke off, her voice shattering, her hands twisted in her lap, fragile and shaking. "I don't want to die with them thinking I didn't love them, with you thinking I never saw your worth." The rawness of her words pierced me. For years I had dreamed of hearing Beulah admit her cruelty. I had imagined it might bring satisfaction, closure. But instead, it left me trembling, because her pain was real now, and my heart, for all its scars, still felt. I lowered the children gently to the sofa cushions. They curled together, James's head against Lily's shoulder. Sleep tugged at them again, but they clung faintly to consciousness, their wide eyes watching. I turned back to Beulah. "You want to make it right?" My voice was quiet, but sharp. "Then prove it. Prove to them that love doesn't come with conditions. Prove to me that you're not the same woman who mocked me for bleeding, for bending, for breaking. I can't let them suffer under that kind of cruelty, not from you, not from anyone." Her tears fell harder. She nodded, desperate. "I'll prove it. Every day I have left, I'll prove it." Her voice broke again, softer now, almost pleading. "But Loretta May, will you let me try? Or will you keep me at a distance? Because I understand if you can't trust me yet, but I need to know." The choice pressed heavy against my chest. For years, bitterness had been my shield. It kept me warm when nights were cold, when whispers mocked me in the marketplace, when I lay awake wondering how I'd pay the next bill. Bitterness was armor. It reminded me I had been wronged. But bitterness was also a chain. It kept me tethered to Harris, even in his absence. It kept me tied to Beulah's old sneers, to nights of humiliation, to the shadow of who I used to be. And now, looking at Beulah, aged, broken, begging, I wondered if I was ready to let it go. The children stirred again, and Lily's soft voice broke the tension. "Grandma?" Beulah looked up, startled. "Yes, baby?" "Don't cry. Mama always says love makes us strong. So, if you love us, you're strong too." The innocence in her voice sliced through me. Out of the mouths of babes, truth flows easiest. Beulah's sobs deepened, but her smile broke through them. "Oh, child, you don't know what you've given me with those words." James piped up sleepily, his voice muffled. "You can play horse with me tomorrow." Beulah let out a shaky laugh. "I'd like that." Their small gestures, so simple, so pure, illuminated what my heart was wrestling with. This wasn't just about me, it was about them. About what kind of family they would know, what legacy they would inherit. Would they grow up knowing bitterness ruled their mother's heart? Or would they see me choose something harder, braver, grace? I breathed deeply, steadying the quake inside me. "Beulah," I said softly, "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did, but maybe Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about choosing not to let it poison us anymore." Her breath hitched. She pressed her trembling hands together, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, thank you." The night stretched long after that. We didn't speak much more, but something unspoken shifted. Not a complete healing, wounds don't vanish in a single night, but the first stitch in a long mending. I watched Beulah press kisses to the children's foreheads before she retired for the night, her body bent, her steps slow but lighter than before. And when I finally lay beside my children, listening to their steady breaths, I realized the choice had been made. I wasn't going to let Harris's poison dictate my story anymore. I was going to let love win, even if it was the hardest choice of all. Morning crept slowly into the house, its golden light stretching across the parlor and down the long hallway. The air was quieter than it had been in years, as if the very walls exhaled after a night of turmoil. For the first time since stepping into this house, I woke without the weight of humiliation pressing on my chest. Lily and James stirred beside me on the guest bed, their hair tousled, their cheeks flushed with sleep. I kissed their foreheads, whispered promises of pancakes, and let them drift back under as I slipped into the hall. The house was already stirring. I could hear distant voices, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of guests who hadn't left the night before. I walked toward the kitchen, following the smell of coffee, and found Beulah there. She was seated at the long wooden table, her cane propped beside her, her hands wrapped tightly around a steaming mug. For a moment, she looked like any grandmother, small, fragile, human. Not the sharp-tongued matriarch I had once known. Her eyes lifted as I entered, and something in her expression softened. "Good morning, Loretta May." I nodded. "Morning." The words hung there, simple but heavy. Like the first step onto a bridge that had long been burned. We didn't speak for a while. The clatter of the kitchen staff filled the silence. Finally, Beulah's voice broke through. "I told them," she said, her gaze fixed on her mug. "Told who?" "The cousins, the ones Harris dragged in last night. I told them if they ever came into this house again to feed his pride, they'd answer to me. I told them I will not stand by him in his lies any more." She lifted her eyes, steady now. "I want you to know. I meant it." Her words sank into me, surprising me with their weight. For years she had chosen Harris over everything, truth, fairness, even kindness. And now she was choosing differently. "I heard the way you defended them," I said quietly, thinking of Lily and James asleep just down the hall. "It mattered." Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "They deserve to grow up knowing their grandmother fought for them. And so do you." Later that morning, the family gathered again in the dining hall. The birthday celebration had been torn apart the night before, but a strange determination hung in the air. Some guests had stayed, not wanting to leave in the middle of such a storm. Others had returned, curiosity drawing them back to the scene of the night's unraveling. Beulah entered slowly, leaning on her cane. I walked beside her, Lily and James skipping ahead, their laughter cutting through the tension. The crowd hushed as we reached the center of the room. Beulah cleared her throat, her voice firm despite its tremble. "I want to speak." The room stilled. She straightened, her gaze sweeping the faces of her relatives. "All of you know me as a proud woman. Too proud, perhaps. I let that pride blind me. I let it feed cruelty, especially toward this woman." She gestured toward me, her voice breaking. "I mocked her. I judged her. I cast her aside. And last night, I watched her stand taller than I ever thought possible. She carried herself with dignity, and she brought me the greatest gift I could imagine, my grandchildren." Gasps and murmurs rippled, though most already knew. Still, hearing it from Beulah's own lips carried weight. "I was wrong," she continued. "Wrong to doubt her worth, wrong to believe my son's lies. And today, I ask you all to see her as I now see her, not as the woman Harris abandoned, but as the woman who rose. As the mother of my grandchildren, as family." Her cane trembled, but her voice rang strong. If you cannot accept her, you do not accept me." The hall erupted, not in shock, but in applause. Stronger this time, genuine. People rose to their feet, clapping, nodding, some even wiping tears. I stood frozen for a moment, my chest tight, my eyes burning. Beulah, the woman who once called me barren, who once treated me like dirt, was now calling me family, and doing so publicly. Lily tugged at my hand, grinning. "Mama, they're clapping for you again." I knelt, pulling her into my arms, tears spilling freely this time. James joined the hug, his little arms wrapping around my neck. It wasn't applause I craved. It was this, their small bodies warm against mine, their giggles in my ear. Proof that all the years of struggle, of loneliness, of bitterness, had led us here, to love. When the applause quieted, I found my voice. "I don't stand here as a victim anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I stand as a mother, as a woman who rebuilt her life when it was torn apart, as someone who chose to rise instead of remain broken. But I also stand here as someone who knows the cost of bitterness, and I don't want to pass that cost on to my children. They deserve laughter. They deserve a family. They deserve to know that even when love fails, it can rise again in new places." I glanced at Beulah, whose eyes were shining. "So today, I choose grace. For them. For me. Even for those who don't deserve it." The murmurs that followed weren't scandalous anymore. They were of admiration, of respect. I felt the tide shift fully now, no longer a battle of sides, but a quiet acceptance. Beulah reached for Lily and James, pulling them close. They giggled, showing off the necklaces the cousins had given them that morning. She kissed their heads and whispered, "You are my joy." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. That night, when the guests finally dispersed, the house was calm. No slamming doors, no raised voices, just the sound of the children's laughter echoing down the halls, the way it should have always been. As I tucked them into bed, Lily whispered, "Mama, does this mean Grandma loves us now?" I smiled through tears. "Yes, baby. It means she loves you now, and she always will." James grinned sleepily. "Then we don't need him, do we?" I kissed his forehead. "No, darling, we never did." For the first time, I felt peace bloom inside me, not because the past had been erased, but because it no longer held me hostage. I had chosen love, and tomorrow I would choose it again. The house felt different in the morning. The tension that had choked its halls was gone, replaced by something gentler. The air seemed lighter, the walls warmer, as if the very foundation had exhaled a sigh of relief. For the first time in years, I woke in this house without dread pressing on my chest. Lily and James had crawled into my bed at some point in the night, their little bodies curled against me, their breaths deep and even. I lay there for a long moment, watching their lashes flutter, listening to their steady rhythm. This, their warmth, their presence, was everything Harris said I'd never have. And yet here they were, proof that he had never been the author of my story. By the time we came down to breakfast, the house was already buzzing. The cousins and neighbors who had lingered were gathered in the kitchen, plates clattering, voices light. It was strange, hearing laughter where only whispers had lived last night. Beulah sat at the head of the long table, her cane resting beside her. Her eyes lit up when she saw Lily and James run in, still barefoot, their hair wild from sleep. "Good morning, babies," she said, her voice trembling with joy. They scrambled into her lap, nearly knocking the coffee from her hand. She didn't mind. She held them tight, her laughter bubbling, tears streaking her cheeks. I watched quietly from the doorway, arms folded. A pang of something, not quite jealousy, not quite relief, stirred inside me. For years, I'd been the only one pouring into them. Now, at last, they were being claimed by someone else who truly saw them, and maybe that was what I'd wanted all along. No pity, not validation, just family. During breakfast, the conversations turned naturally toward the night before. One cousin leaned in, her voice low but earnest. "Loretta May, I'll be honest with you. When Harris divorced you, I thought he was right. I thought you'd never survive on your own. But last night, you proved us all wrong, and I want you to know I'm proud of you." Murmurs of agreement followed. Heads nodded. More than one person reached across the table to touch my hand, to offer words of apology, of respect. It was strange, hearing it now, the same voices that once whispered behind my back, now speaking blessings to my face. But I accepted it, not because I needed it, but because it was part of closing the circle. After the meal, Beulah insisted we gather again in the parlor. The air was different this time. No anger, no accusations. Just family. She rose slowly, leaning on her cane, and gestured for Lily and James to stand beside her. "I want everyone to see them," she said, her voice trembling. "These are my grandchildren, the ones I never knew I had. And from this day forward, they will know nothing but love from me." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was gentle, warm, like the steady beat of a heart. She turned to me then, her voice breaking. "And this is my daughter, Loretta May. I rejected her once. I will not make that mistake again." Tears blurred my vision. The weight of her words pressed deep into my chest. As the room filled with laughter and chatter again, I slipped outside for a moment, needing air. The garden stretched out before me, bathed in morning light. I walked among the roses, their scent sharp, their thorns catching at my skirt. It struck me then how much life mirrored these roses. Beauty and pain intertwined, inseparable. My marriage to Harris had been all thorns. My years alone had been the sharp sting of survival. But my children, my laughter with them, my triumph with them, they were the roses in full bloom. And now, with Beulah's change of heart, even the thorns felt less threatening. I thought back to the night Harris had thrown me out, the rain soaking me as I stood in the driveway with nothing but a suitcase. I remembered the sting of shame, the burn of betrayal. I had thought it was the end of me. But looking now at the life I had built, I realized it had been the beginning. Harris had meant to break me. But in truth, he had freed me to discover my strength, my worth, my future. When I returned inside, Beulah was seated with Lily and James, showing them how to string beads from an old sewing kit she had dug out of a drawer. They laughed when she fumbled, teased her gently, hugged her tighter than ever. She looked up at me, her eyes full. "They've given me a reason to live a little longer, Loretta May, and for that, I thank you." For once, I didn't feel the need to remind her of the years lost. I simply nodded. "Then let's make the most of what's left." The day stretched long with warmth. Cousins played games with the children, neighbors offered to bring by gifts, laughter rolled through the halls like it hadn't in years. For the first time, this house felt like home. Not Harris's home, not Beulah's fortress of pride, but a home where love could live. I knew Harris's shadow would linger for a while, his threats, his venom, his pride. Those wounds wouldn't vanish overnight, but I also knew something deeper now. He no longer had power here, not over me, not over my children, not even over Beulah. That chapter was closed. As night fell, I tucked Lily and James into bed again, their small hands clasped together as they drifted into sleep. I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "We did it. We made it through." Then I stood by the window, staring out at the dark sky, and let the peace settle over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. If you believe no woman should ever be shamed for starting over, hit subscribe right now, because only manipulators like Harris would want this story silenced. And drop a comment. Love always wins if you stand with Loretta May and not with men who build their pride on someone else's pain. The evening sun dipped low, spilling gold through the parlor windows. What had begun as a night of shame had transformed into something none of us could have imagined, a true celebration. The birthday cake Beulah never got to cut the night before was brought back out, candles glowing, flames dancing. But this time, it wasn't a room full of whispers and judgment. It was joy, laughter, family standing together, unbroken. Lily and James leaned over the table, their voices shrill with delight as they counted aloud. 1, 2, 3. Beulah laughed, cheeks wet with tears, and blew out the candles. The room erupted in cheers. For the first time in her life, her birthday wasn't about being the matriarch in control. It was about being a grandmother I loved. As the slices were passed, cousins and neighbors pressed around me. Words of apology flowed, some hesitant, some bold. "We misjudged you, Loretta May. You're stronger than any of us gave you credit for. Your children are a blessing to this family." I accepted each with grace, not because I needed their validation, but because it mattered that Lily and James saw it, that they grew up knowing their mother was not the discarded woman Harris painted me to be, but the woman who rose. Later, when the candles had burned low and the guests began to drift away, I found myself once again in the garden. The air was cool, the roses fragrant in the dark. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash through me. Harris's voice sneering that I was barren, Beulah's sharp tongue cutting me down. Nights of hunger, days of toil, years of loneliness, and then Elijah's steady hand lifting me back up. Lily's first cry, James's first step, laughter in a tiny kitchen I had built with my own 2 hands. They had tried to bury me, but they hadn't known I was a seed. Beulah joined me in the garden, her cane tapping softly against the stone path. She stood beside me for a long moment before speaking. "I don't expect you to forget, Loretta May, but I hope you'll let me be part of what comes next. I don't have many years left, but I'd like them to be spent loving you. Loving them." I studied her face. The wrinkles of regret, the eyes softened by truth. For years, I thought hearing these words would never come. And yet here they were, not as a dream, but as a reality. "You'll have that chance," I said quietly. "But understand, this family is mine now. It belongs to Lily, to James, not to Harris, not to his lies, and not to pride. If you want to be part of it, you'll walk with us, not above us." Her chin trembled, but she nodded. "I will." When we returned inside, Lily and James had staged their own play in the living room, prancing about with paper crowns made from napkins. "We're the kings and queens now!" they shouted, their laughter echoing off the walls. Beulah clapped along, tears glistening as she watched them claim their little kingdom. And in that moment, I knew Harris had truly lost. Not because he had stormed away, not because his lies had been exposed, but because the love he tried to destroy was alive and thriving, right here in this house. I tucked the children into bed that night with Beulah at my side. She kissed them softly, whispering blessings. I stood in the doorway, watching her linger at their bedside, and felt the final pieces of the broken past fall away. This house, once filled with scorn, now rang with the promise of new beginnings. The next morning, as we packed our things, Beulah clutched my hand. "Promise me you'll bring them back. Promise me I'll have the chance to love them the way I should have loved you." I nodded. "You will. But this time, it will be on our terms, not Harris's." She smiled, weary but hopeful. "That's all I ask." As we stepped out onto the porch, the sunlight warm on our faces, I looked back at the house one last time. I had come here expecting to be humiliated. Instead, I had left with my head high, my children celebrated, my dignity intact. Harris had wanted me broken. Instead, he gave me the stage to show just how unbreakable I was. And the sweetest part? He wasn't here to rewrite it. That night, back in my own home, I lay awake with Lily on one side and James on the other. Their small breaths rose and fell against me, anchors of love. I thought of the girl I had been when Harris left me. Frightened, penniless, certain her life was over. And then I thought of the woman I was now. Mother, builder, survivor, victor. For the first time I realized I wasn't defined by what Harris took from me. I was defined by what I created in the ruins, and it was beautiful. If you've stayed through Loretta May's journey, through Harris's cruelty at his own mother's birthday, the whispers that painted her barren and broken, the lonely nights she carried Lily and James's truth in silence, and that final moment when his mask shattered before the family, you can't walk away without hitting subscribe. Tap subscribe if you believe manipulators like Harris should never win. Smash. Like if you stood with Loretta May when her children silenced every lie. And if you sat here, heart pounding, waiting to see if Loretta May would fold or fight. If you stayed through the birthday humiliation, the gaslighting, the shatter point, and the moment her children's laughter rose louder than Harris's poison, then you would want to see the latest, more captivating videos I prepared for you. They are right on your screen waiting for you to binge. Grab a popcorn and click the video on your screen now to watch that next. Take care.